Friends, a lot has happened over the last 10 days in the world diplomacy as well as India's place in it. From Prime Minister going to Cyprus to Prime Minister going to G7, there was a big controversy whether he would get an invite. He has gone. What was the Canadian Prime Minister's statement? Vis-a-vis the perennial situation with Pakistan. So, the first thing I would like to start with is because this tweet by Mr. Kanwal Sibal got a lot of attention, wherein he points out that is Trump in a sense, signaling that Asim Munir is going to be the new prime minister or president of Pakistan because before this, no army chief had been invited to the White House. Ever to be invited by any US president before. Earlier presidents had a sense of propriety and observed protocol. All previous army chiefs invited by US presidents had become presidents of Pakistan, having taken over power. Is Munir being encouraged to take over power formally? So while a lot of stuff has happened in the world, but Pakistan, the constant thorn in our side, has gotten an invite to the White House. To discuss all this, we have with us Mr. Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. He's been on the channel before, so I will not waste too much time introducing him, except to say that all these global events, there is none better than him to figure it out and to say what it means for India going ahead. Thank you, sir, for taking out time.
My pleasure.
So, sir, what do you think? Is it actually a signal? The US has constantly supported military leaders in Pakistan. Is with their conflict with Iran, they are again going in the same direction, or were you just being tongue-in-cheek and just trying to have fun with it? So what is your view behind it?
No, first of all, it is extremely unusual. It's unprecedented where the US president invites a foreign army chief for a private luncheon, and he has along with him the US Secretary of State. And then he later says he was honored to meet him. I mean, there is no protocol equivalence between the president of the United States and a foreign military chief, whether Pakistan or anybody else. I mean, if, as I said in my tweet, if the person who's being invited was a former army chief, but then took over power formally and became president, then yes, it's different. And there have been, in fact, Ziaul Haq, Yahya Khan, Ayub Khan, Musharraf, all have visited the White House and have met the president, but they were heads of state. But this person is not head of state at all. He's merely an army chief. So there is no protocol equivalence, and it is improper for the US president to equate himself with a foreign military chief and entertain him personally. And there's no need to do so. After all, the foreign military chief, his normal contact would be the Pentagon. So he meets the Joint Chiefs, chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff or the Defense Secretary, and they can brief the president on whatever he has to say in terms of his assessment of what is happening in Iran, or if they want to get something from Pakistan, since he is effectively the power center in that country. That is the way this is done. Not the president himself, but saying, look, come and meet me. I want to understand from you what is happening and cut out the entire process and the protocol in this regard. That's one aspect. The other is, I was not tongue-in-cheek, except that there are precedents where all these fellows have become heads of state. And we've had military coup d'etats in Pakistan. And Munir is obviously very power hungry. He declared himself a field marshal after a stinging military defeat. You do that only if you have a huge military victory. Clearly, the entire political establishment is at his feet and want to do his bidding. They want to save themselves. He is the man who's put Imran Khan in jail, who is effectively his real political opponent. So he has ambitions. Now, it may not be that that this meeting necessarily is intended to signal to him to become the head of state, but he may feel encouraged that he is actually being totally accepted politically after this effective, I would say, self-elevation as field marshal, and convey to Pakistan and the Pakistani political class that he is the real power center. And from his meeting with Trump, he may feel encouraged that he has some sort of a green light and they're not going to be terribly upset if he does that. And if the local circumstances, uh, you know, uh, allow him, or if he feels there's an opportunity to do so, he can do it. So it's in that sense that the road is open to him, depending on his ambitions and the local situation, to effectively become head of state.
Sir, in a sense, because you talked about Imran Khan, in a sense, it legitimizes his move of keeping Imran Khan in jail because President Trump, while he was contesting the election, he had that you are weaponizing judiciary, that it's a lawfare. And this happens in third world countries and it's been done in United States of America now. That was his entire case. And he supported a lot of people, even in France, people who are in legal trouble from his side of the spectrum or what he believes is his side of the spectrum. But in Pakistan, the Imran Khan issue of Imran Khan being in jail appears settled once you have invited him. That means there is no movement of getting Imran Khan out of jail or any democratic process where that leader can come out of jail. That also sends that sort of a signal, sir.
Quite clearly, because if you recall, Imran Khan was received by Trump during his first term, 2018, I think, and in fact they got along extremely well. And in fact, he said, "I would love to negotiate, mediate between India and Pakistan on Kashmir." And Imran Khan, of course, did it sick and said, "Yes, yes, you must have," that sort of a thing. And there was a feeling that after he came back, the second time, he would actually pressure the Pakistani political establishment, meaning the military establishment, to release Imran Khan. Notice at that time within Pakistan, there was speculation that he may start putting pressure on Pakistan to release Imran Khan. Now, he knows very well the man who had put Imran Khan in jail, prevented him from fighting the election, is General Field Marshal Muniro.
Sir.
So you're quite right in saying that by now endorsing him and giving him this huge political boost by inviting him to the White House for a personal private lunch with him, which apparently lasted a few hours, he's abandoned Imran Khan implicitly, totally, and given Asim Munir a free hand with regard to what he wants to do internally. He has been now identified by Trump as the man to go to shape U.S.-Pakistan relations. That the civilian establishment, Shehbaz Sharif or whatever else, are not consequential in this regard. Look, as I said in one of my other tweets, or I said somewhere, I said it on that TV interview. Supposing a chief of defense staff goes to the United States, and he's invited for a private lunch by President Trump, what signal would that give? What signal would that give? It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Sir, but simultaneously, there was this news that Prime Minister Modi was also invited to US while he was in G7. Yet he refused, and the statement came out that he said we'll meet whenever that next meeting happens, Quad, I think. So, do you think, sir? What do you think was the Indian thought process behind not going there and signaling a signal that we will not come, even though we are in Canada, even though you might want to have a meeting? Was it to do with that entire narrative which Trump has consistently maintained, but the foreign secretary has denied that I was the one responsible for ceasefire?
I think a couple of things. One is that they were to meet at Kanani, Askis or whatever. How do you pronounce this place? The G7 meeting in Canada was there. They were supposed to meet, but Trump left early. So they couldn't meet. And therefore, Trump was giving him an opening to come to Washington before he leaves Canada, before he leaves that North American continent, and have that meeting. But he had already invited the field marshal to that lunch, and it would have given the impression. I'll come to that, whether this was actually in his mind or not. It would have given the impression that we are actually encouraging him to mediate. This is how it would have been read by commentators. That that he spoke to Munir, he met the Prime Minister, and he was carrying forward his agenda of mediation. I tell you in this regard my personal experience. When I was Deputy Chief of Mission in Washington, Narasimha Rao was to come to Washington on an official visit, and there were thick rumors in the air that Benazir Bhutto would also be coming. So I was instructed to speak to the State Department, the Robin Ritter, to say that look, please, put a little gap between the two visits, because at that time also there was all this question of mediation and stuff like that. We were taking a lot of interest in Kashmir, because it will be construed on our side that this was one more effort by United States to bring the two parties together. But if you put a gap between the two, it will not be interpreted that way. So the request was, it shouldn't be that within a week or Narasimha Rao visit, Benazir Bhutto is also invited. I got a very sharp and very aggressive response from her. I will not go into that. What I meant is that even then, and I'm talking of 1992, 93 or whatever it is, even then we had these concerns. We were talking about we didn't want even a week's gap. But here he is giving how many 12-hour gap on this gap. And in the context of a declared intention to want to mediate between India and Pakistan on Kashmir. So that was the second. The third is that why should the Prime Minister of India be so anxious to meet him? If they couldn't meet him if he couldn't meet him in Canada, fine. But he had to go to Croatia subsequently. He would have had to either cancel or postpone that visit, because all the arrangements would have been made on the other side, and it would have been improper for him just for this meeting with Trump to complicate his visit to Croatia. So I think even from that point of view, that he had prior engagement, it was a legitimate reason for him not to go to Washington. And finally, I would say that look at what finally the Foreign Secretary said, very, very clearly, emphatically, and publicly, dismissing all the claims of Trump. Now, I'm sure Modi would have said all this to him in private in Canada if the two had met. But since the two couldn't meet, it was important. And since the General Munir was there in Washington, it was important that we made our position very clear. And so we made it. I think this is how the whole thing went.
Sir, also with Trump, you never know. While the Prime Minister, if he had gone there, he could have very easily brought in Asim Munir in the same meeting itself to have a photo opportunity, shake hands, hug. What do you do? He is very capable of that, sir.
That would have, no, I don't think he would have gone. He would have gone that far. But he could have said that, look, I've spoken to him, and this is what it is, and I'm briefing you on this. And effectively intruding himself into the mediation process in this way. But I don't think he would have gone as far as that.
Because with Trump, sometimes one feels the protocol is dead in the world. Because there is no protocol. As you have rightly said, he can meet a army chief, he meets some very random people. He is, in one of these visits, he met a person USA designated as a terrorist with, I think, 5 million or 10 million reward. People are saying it's only Bin Laden is not alive. Otherwise, he may have had a hamburger with him. So everything with Trump, sir, now has become the theater of the absurd. But, sir, the visit starts with Cyprus. And that was, I thought, significant because up till now, any time any nation has supported Pakistan, in my memory, I do not know when, we have hit back at nations supporting our adversaries. Is this a new shift you feel where if somebody is supporting an adversary of ours, we are also going and pressing on their pain points? The reason behind the Cyprus visit, sir.
No, I wouldn't go as far as that, because if that was the case, then how do we deal with the United States? That's wrong.
So where US is the big.
Supporting Pakistan even more. They're giving arms aid to Pakistan much more, F-16s and this and that. So leave that aside. No, I'll give you a background here also. So it's not the first time that our prime ministers or leaders have visited Cyprus. I have accompanied Vajpayee to Cyprus. I have accompanied the then president of India to Cyprus. So we've had a long-standing close ties with Cyprus. As you know, Makarios, Archbishop Makarios, very close to Mrs. Gandhi. We have in the Gulf links in Delhi a road named after him. Now, I give you a background here again. When I was posted to Turkey in 1989 as ambassador, this was it was made clear by, by the leaders on both sides. Prime Minister Ozal on the side of Turkey and Mrs. Gandhi on our side, that we are now opening up a new phase in our relationship at the initiative of Turkey. And the basic understanding was that we move away from sponsoring uh, Cyprus Cypriot resolutions against Turkey in the United Nations, and you back off on the India-Pakistan issues. This is what they did till our friend Erdogan a few years ago started changing that policy. So he's started backing Pakistan, talking about Kashmir, treating Kashmir as a Muslim issue, Islamic issue, and this and that, and of course, arming Pakistan. So as a result of that, I think it was decided that you have an Achilles heel. You are occupying northern Cyprus. And the only country that recognized Turkish occupation of northern Cyprus is Turkey. Nobody. And then going to the Green Line, I've been to the Green Line also, looking across it. And on in the joint statement, the kind of things that have been said about northern Cyprus, referring to UN resolutions and everything else, it's a clear signal to Turkey. But beyond that, as I said, even during the time when our relations with Turkey had not become sensitive on account of their support, open service to Pakistan. In the OIC also, they are the most we have been visiting, our leaders have been visiting Cyprus.
So, but especially because right now visiting the Green Line, looking over, and then the statement which came, it appeared that we are, in our sense, trying to tell Turkey to back off. Otherwise, the relationship with Cyprus may deepen, including some defense cooperation. They are saying some agreements have been signed, some exercises have been planned. So, do you think India should go that route and is going that route?
Well, we have armed Armenia. There is a huge problem also in that area between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. In fact, Azerbaijan has now joined Turkey in supporting Pakistan. The first time, Kashmir, in the statement made by the Azerbaijani president in the General Assembly. So it's not as if that would be far away from our mind. See, one is that we have now, defense material which we can export. We want to export. We have set for ourselves very ambitious targets for defense exports. After the recent performance of our weapon systems, Akash, for example, which we are given to Armenia, and BrahMos, which we are given to Philippines, there would be interest in acquiring Indian weapons. And if Cyprus, if at all, is interested, we'll be quite happy to provide them whatever they want. But it will have the initiative naturally have to come from Cyprus. Cyprus is, after all, member of the European Union, and it has to fit its entire thinking and approach on defense-related issues. Also, view of its membership. And then if we make some, we are strengthening our ties with Greece. And it may also evolve into some kind of, although Greece is a member of NATO, some kind of defense relationship if it becomes. I think there will be a spillover of that into Cyprus also because of the very close relationship between Greece and Cyprus. But even if he did that, the disparity of power between Cyprus and Turkey, it is enormous. It's not like India, Pakistan.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
but
mm,
it is a kind of a political signal to Turkey. But more importantly, it would, our raising such issues internationally is not only the Kurdish issue also,
mm.
on which Turkey is very, very sensitive, because it has been absolutely lawless in terms of treating the Kurdish population internally and externally in Iraq and in Syria. They've been bombing them without totally contrary to international law, violating the sovereignty of Iraq and Syria. So there are vulnerabilities on the Turkish side, and if they are not careful, uh, you know, India may be compelled to raise such issues in the future in international forums or in bilateral relations with countries with which Turkey has issues.
Sir, from Cyprus, then the G7, the entire event happened, and there was a lot of controversy behind it. Initially, news coming that Prime Minister has not been invited, then he's been invited. Then there were, for the first time, the Canadian intelligence has used the word Khalistani extremism in a statement they have issued. So, sir, overall, how do you see and what do you think were the reasons that so much controversy happened in G7? Is it because it was in Canada, which has historically, and again you will from 1980s almost onwards, maybe before that, supported elements in India which are seeking to create trouble for India?
Well, as I have said on some other occasion, uh, the G7. See, Canada is not not a credible member of the G7. I mean, G7 are the foremost advanced economies of the world. Canada doesn't fit into that. Canada became member of the G7 because of its membership of NATO and its relationship with the United States. Uh, Otherwise, as United States, Trump is saying, you are more eligible to be the 51st state of the United States of America. You are so utterly dependent on us in every way, economically and security-wise. And he went on to say, there's nothing that you produce that we need. We can produce it ourselves. Now, what I mean is that Canada doesn't have that status. Now, if they hold since it is rotational, so if they hold that summit, then the question arises whether, when it comes to inviting India, which has been invited to God knows how many, the first time we were invited to a G7 meeting was uh, in by France in 2003 when I was foreign secretary, and I had attended that also. And then subsequently, we've been invited here and there. And for the last 6-7 years, we've been constantly invited. Now, if Canada was not to invite India, it would have stood out as Canada being petulant, being giving precedence to its to its bilateral political issues with India, and using that to distort, in a sense, the entire outreach that the G7 traditionally has built to an important country like India, whose profile is rising, and with whom all the other 6 members are very keen to expand ties and are expanding ties. And therefore, in the consultative process, they consult with each other. There would have been pressure on Canada that you must review your decision and not snub India, because this will not go down well. Even in their bilateral relations with us, it will figure that you guys, you didn't sort of press Canada to be more sensible and not allow the bilateral issue with us. Well, it's a multilateral affair. It's not a bilateral. So that obviously was a factor. But other than that, the fact that Trudeau is no longer prime minister and it's too bad, and he doesn't come with the same baggage that Trudeau had. Trudeau also inherited his baggage from his father. Mark Carney doesn't have that kind of a legacy to which he is tied. Then he's a economist, he's a banker, so a new man, and he may have reassessed what were the gains and losses in the continuing problem with India, whether some fresh thinking needed to be done, a fresh approach was required, and this was a good opportunity for him also. very good opportunities for him to
mm,
take a gesture towards India and begin a process of dialogue to normalize ties progressively with India. If the, if he had otherwise invited, he couldn't have invited India bilaterally.
mm,
It had to be in a multilateral setting.
mm, mm,
A multilateral setting, when he's hosting, it was a godsend opportunity for him also to make an overture to India, despite internal opposition. This third, the third factor is that that fellow, the unspeakable Jagmeet Singh and NDP
mm,
lost his election. NDP won less than 10 seats or whatever. So there is something in the political system that a party loses a certain status when it doesn't win enough seats. So they have been decimated. So he had relatively a freer hand, though, as we have seen, these pro-Khalistani lobbies remain anti-aggressive and violent in Canada. Uh, and there were all these street demonstrations, the young pleasant one, the youngster kicking the porter. The, that's uncivilized. But I think, and then you must not forget that the security agencies in Canada have been penetrated by these fellows. A lot of these Sikhs now, I don't want to say every one of them in the Khalistani, but a lot of these Sikhs are in the police and in the customs, and they have strong links with the security forces. And once the security forces take a certain line, what foreign interference and this and that, then any government has to be cognizant of the fact that their security agencies have a particular view and they have to be accommodated. So that would have also been an inhibiting factor. Because we've seen how the security agencies in Canada, one can't say they're utterly inefficient. That for years and years, they couldn't figure out who brought down Air India, our Air India plane. And also, they've been extremely tolerant towards the activities of the Khalistanis, this and that.
That's very interesting, sir, what you say, because if a security agency has come out with a report, no matter who the prime minister comes, he is in a sense bound with it to raise it, especially in a country like Canada, where democracy, that's a tiny country with opposition rather strong. So, in that sense, embedding of security agencies and their reports make it very difficult for the prime minister to also go ahead in a bilateral environment. Maybe for them also, it's easing out if you do it in a multilateral sphere.
Exactly. And then, of course, he spelled out quite clearly and very sensibly why he was approaching India. He recognized India's role in the rising economic power, uh, its expertise in various areas, advanced technology, this and that, digital stuff, and said very importantly that if the G7 has programs of outreach to Africa and the global South, India is indispensable as a partner. You have to partner with India. So he said all the right things, and subsequently you've seen that the visit went well and the joint statement is good, and we've decided to begin the process of normalization with exchange of high commissioners as a first step. But it is not going to be a quick process. It will take time because we had reduced the size of the missions drastically. The Khalistani extremist issue has not disappeared. So we have to have more assurance about how they're going to treat these people who are dangerous in terms of the kind of threats they emanate. Well, incidentally, I read somewhere that Mark Carney was the CEO or whatever at a high position in a particular investment company which has invested billions of dollars in India of pension funds.
That would be interesting because there were allegations of Trudeau investing in China, sir, in his companies.
Therefore, he's come with that background that he's been managing investments in India. And there's a very large scale investments in India. Therefore, when he comes and becomes prime minister, he was also, as you know, the chairman of the bank, president of England or whatever. Right. So he's come with that background. So he understands the economic dimensions of the partnership with India.
Yes, sir. So the last topic I wanted to cover is this Iran-Israel issue, where India, there are two views floating around. One is India should support Israel. India has friendship with Israel. The other view is that when Iran was completely in the US sphere pre-79, it wasn't very pro-India. It was rather pro-Pakistan. And that view suggests that India, because there are so many sanctions with Iran, has certain dealings, can take oil, etc., etc. So in that sense, it's become a tightrope for India when Israel and Iran is happening. So, sir, how, in Indian perspective, how do you see Indian diplomacy should play out, and what is an Indian interest in this entire situation as it's developing?
Firstly, you are absolutely right that until uh, the Shah uh, was ruling Iran, we had very cold ties with Pakistan, with Iran. He was squarely in the Western camp. Don't forget, Iran was a member of the Baghdad Pact, a member of CENTO, uh, and there was the RCD, regional cooperation in Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan. Uh, During the 65 war, Iran helped uh, Pakistan, Sen-
Wow.
71 also. So, so our relationship has not been particularly close. One must also not forget that when we did our nuclear test and we were under a lot of pressure, at least United Nations and sanctions and everything else, Iran was not particularly helpful. Uh, i- in fact, its diplomacy was not very friendly. Uh, though, mind you, in the UN Human Rights Commission in Geneva, when Pakistan moved a resolution to condemn India, Iran was very helpful.
So this is what era, what time period, sir, broadly, when Iran was helpful you're talking about?
Well, this is when Pakistan moved. It was in what year was that? 19 middle 90s.
I'm saying after the Shah went. It's after the.
After the Shah went. Uh, I was quite familiar with the dates, and the people who were involved in this. I know them pretty well, uh, and they given me a full. Uh, uh, they gave me a full briefing on how they went about their diplomacy and how Iran was very. Uh,
Okay.
and then, of course, we developed a very strong economic ties on the oil side. Iran at one time became our largest oil supplier. Then it
Mm,
fluctuated between number one and two, Saudi Arabia and Iran.
mm,
As part of the nuclear deal, we were
mm,
compelled by the Americans to stop buying
mm,
oil. They
mm,
also insisted that we don't do any military exercises, naval exercises, defense exercises with Iran, which we stopped.
mm,
But then, for access to Afghanistan, the Chabah route became extremely important, and Iran was very helpful. Iran gave us an opportunity to invest in their oil sector, though the discussions were difficult and much of it didn't fructify. Pars one or two or whatever. Uh, I was involved in those things at one time, but we were not able to satisfy them. But they wanted a lot of money up front. We were not sure whether our money would be secure or this and that, whatever. And in fact, it's our company that discovered natural gas in the Pars oil field.
mm,
Or we discovered oil in that oil field. It was an Indian
mm,
vessel. Anyway, I won't go into those details.
mm,
And then, of course, the North-South corridor, international North-South corridor.
mm,
Incidentally, Prime Minister Modi, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat,
mm,
visited Russia when I was ambassador there and went to Astrakhan, which was the point
mm,
on the Russian side to which the
mm,
North-South national corridor was be connected. So clearly, Gujarat had a lot of interest in this because the Gujarati port, from Gujarati port to Iranian port, and then through
mm,
this corridor up to Astrakhan and then to Russia,
mm, mm,
etc. So, so there have been these kind of, and then a couple of other things. Iran is Shia, Pakistan is Sunni.
mm,
So we have to sort of see if we can leverage that.
mm,
There are
mm,
neighbor difficulty problems with each other.
mm,
To
mm,
we can leverage that. We have to give Iran some stakes in us, in our company, so that they become a factor in this triangular India-Pakistan-Iran relationship. So there are, and then long and short is that we have this huge source of energy right next to us, but we have been compelled by circumstances not to access it, and it is our interest to do so. And as I said on Afghanistan, in terms of access and all, they have been helpful, etc. So now, when it comes to Iran and Israel, now Israel has become a very, very important defense partner of ours, helping us to acquire certain kinds of technologies, certain kind of material, which is important in terms of our dealing with the terrorism, as also our air capacities with smart bombs and stuff like that. The relationship between Netanyahu and Modi has been very good. And then the rank and file of the BJP, there's a lot of feeling towards Israel. And at the back of it, it is that the manner in which Israel deals with the Islamic terrorism is something we should emulate. And they had planned for doing this. Now comes the more difficult part.
That's the entire problem now, sir, yes.
Because Netanyahu has gone just too far. Just too far. And the humanitarian dimension of what is happening in Gaza is real. Okay, the Hamas were horrible fellows, and they needed to be dealt with the way they were. But subsequently, you can see the entire place has been virtually razed to the ground. And then lack of humanitarian aid and stuff like that, killings, civilians being killed. The UN figures are quite shocking with regard to women and children that have been killed. And then he goes and attacks Iran, a country of 90 million people, old civilization. Whatever Iran's unacceptable position on Israel's right to exist, and this and that and that, and the provocations from Iran, which are not non-existent, it's a very, very major step for a small country like Israel to take on Iran, try to destroy its nuclear facilities, as also openly call for a regime change, and now the assassination of Khamenei, which is totally unacceptable. So, in a sense, although this may not be, I think one should say it, that just as Israel is creating problems for the United States of America, that the Israel relationship with America is costing U.S. foreign policy. Our close ties with Israel are also beginning to cost us in terms of our foreign policy, because it's gone just far in terms of violating international law and the manner in which he's been treating civilians, and of course, the initiative to attack Iran. He has no mandate from anyone to take out Iran's nuclear facility. Who has given him that mandate? And you're not going through this debate as to whether Iran has a nuclear weapon. Point is, Israel has nuclear weapons, doesn't it? So, anyways, so we are in a difficult situation. We have been now put in a position where we've been abstaining on all UN resolutions, UNGA resolutions targeting Iran, the latest one also on the ceasefire in Gaza, puts us in a difficult position with the global south.
Sir,
now, being insensitive to humanitarian causes, our entire slogan and our entire foreign policy is based on the concept that the world is a family. So there is an issue there.
So there are two questions which arise from what you have said. One, isn't, sir, Hamas and Iran qualitatively different in the sense that while there might be humanitarian violations in Hamas, but at least in India, there is very little sympathy for Hamas, and there is no uh, interests of India as a nation in Hamas. So, in that sense, whatever Israel does there, as a humanitarian, you might feel any view, but as a nation, it doesn't really affect us because we don't get any benefit out of Hamas. And in my view, they are hiding, they hide behind women, kids, and all that other thing. But Iran, there are Indian interests beyond whatever the humanitarian grounds are. And in those Indian interests, sir, as you have said, friendship with Israel is going to be difficult because there is support, political support in India for Israel, at least in the ruling party and its rank and file, as you say. And also oil and strategic affairs with Iran. And third, sir, do you think humanitarian aspects are, in a sense, which came out after World War II, that you will not do this, you will not do that, etc., etc., etc. Nuremberg trials happened. That is effectively dead because when you can call for regime change with removing the leader in whatever form, he's a dictator, he's a supreme leader, whatever, then you are going beyond what the accepted norms which came out after World War II, and that in a sense is shattered. It's not there anymore.
True, true, and that is where there not only is Netanyahu guilty of this, even Trump himself. I mean, look at his tweet that why does he have to say, we know where Khamenei is, and we will not take him now, and in bracket kill him, but we'll do it when it's needed. I mean, the President of the United States talking about political assassination. Remember the First World War started because they assassinated our two first men. Now, tomorrow will then, let's say this gives room for Putin to kill Zelensky, or for the United States to kill Maduro, or for someone else to kill Kim Jong-un, or it can, in other countries, there are a lot of differences, and therefore you create a norm that you can talk openly and also do it, then people may start doing it. That's the best way to resolve conflicts, and if you used to assassinate the head of state of that country. I mean, this is unacceptable. But this is where the things are going, and it's very, very unfortunate. And certainly, India is being put in a difficult situation.
Sir, as one of my professors, when he was teaching us international law, he used to say that there is nothing like international law. That is one of the views. It's only the law of the mighty, because US hadn't followed Nicaragua and some things at the time when Russia was strong. Now, effectively, you say who's given Israel the mandate. Basically, Israel's military power and we that Trump uses, either it's a royal we or it's a we which is talking about Israel and Trump together, they have the mandate. In a sense, nobody is going to oppose them. There is no sanction, there is no police force mandating international law. Only thing is, we could be in very interesting times, as you were saying, that would other nations adopt this? What if China starts adopting this policy, which has the power to do so, in a sense?
No, for example, when the wrong kind of person gets elected in Taiwan, they may say, well, and this is get rid of the person. Not that they will do it. But what I mean is that you are opening a breach in international norms of such a how should I say, such a magnitude in moral, political, strategic terms, that you're going to live the consequences of that internationally for years ahead. It should not be done. You cannot normalize the political assassination of a head of state with which you have a conflict, especially as if the reasons for the conflict and the responsibility for the conflict are not only one-sided. After all, you see, Hamas is an odious organization, no doubt, and what they did was absolutely terrible. And we were right to condemn them very forcefully and repeatedly. It is also wrong that Iran was supporting Hezbollah and also Hamas in some senses. Though, mind you, and here's where the picture becomes gray. You hear the former Israeli prime ministers, officially, I've heard them on television, or not officially, heard them on television to say, Ehud Barak, for example, that who built Hamas? Netanyahu. because he allowed billions of dollars to be sent, to be funneled to Qatar, to Hamas through Qatar, in order to keep the Palestinians divided, have a body of Palestinians who were deeply opposed to the Palestinian Authority, so that the two remain divided, and therefore the whole idea of a Palestinian state could not actually uh, take shape because of divisions within the. In other words, it was a strategy. Till, of course, Hamas did what it did. Uh, so, but once you have these gray areas as to where responsibilities are, where Israel has been, how Israel has been treating the Palestinians, especially on the West Bank now, as you see, and the kind of things that their extremists say, we can't, despite our very friendly ties with the inside, we can't identify with that. Nor can we identify uh, with Iran when it says that Israel has no right to exist. In fact, again, I'll tell you that I spoke to someone who's now a very high position in Iran today when he came to India a few years ago. And I told him that, look, you make it very difficult for your friends to support you when you take a position like this, that Israel has no right to exist. But I said, you are such an old state, such a civilization state. Look at your history. Your future is not dependent on whether Israel exists or doesn't exist. So why do you make this the centerpiece of your foreign policy? He tried to hedge an answer and this and that and that. And eventually, when I kept coaxing him, he said, because he wants leadership of the Islamic world. Uh, so Israel was, I mean,
Sir,
Iran
to, a,
was.
to, to a degree, Israel, as a tiny nation, once it faces a maximalistic position which says you have no, you should not exist, pushed you to the sea, all that slogans, right? So, sir, in their mind, and all my friends who are from Israel, they say that we have to take a preventive step because if we do not, once they have the N bomb, they will bomb us. So, if we
No,
keep waiting,
that's nonsense. They're complete nonsense. Pakistan has had the N bomb. No, have they bombed us? Why should they bomb Israel?
sir, but don't you think it was what we read about that in 80s we had an opportunity of scuttling their program with Israel? That is really a lot of people talk about it. And you were in foreign service at that time. So do you think we did miss an opportunity and by not doing it and by taking it, what was the, because
It doesn't
that
work.
was something very interesting. Why?
It doesn't look like that because, uh, after all, you can destroy people, you can't destroy knowledge. And then the other people will rise and they will begin restart the program and this and that. It's only when there's such a regime change that a very friendly power, very friendly people come to power, and then they become totally aligned with you, and that kind of a thing. Then yes, but what's the guarantee that if today they take out Iran's nuclear program, that that in the future Iran will not restart its programs? Because ultimately, you have to occupy Iran physically, or you have a new set of people governing Iran, like what's happening in Syria a little bit. you know, who are totally open to the West and will do the West bidding and this and that. Mind you, again, it's interesting. Who started Iran nuclear program? The Shah of Iran. Who helped in initially? The French. So I mean, all these things are not so simple.
Yes.
Sometimes with this thing that Iran will use nuclear weapons. Why should it use nuclear weapons?
Because their statement is because their leadership makes consistently a statement that Israel should not exist. If that is your declared stance, I
No. The point is, you have to differentiate between rhetoric and reality, and also how you put pressure on Israel by creating, by supporting Hezbollah, by supporting Hamas, by supporting Syria, in order to put pressure on Israel, so that their acceptance toward the Palestinians and the Arabs, and their region and their desire to expand the territory of Israel is contained. One can also look at that way. And then, if you have a nuclear weapon, then in the Middle East, Israel is not only the only country possessing nuclear weapons, and therefore Israel's hands are tied, and therefore it have to change its policy towards the Arabs, to the Palestinians, because its capacity then to assert itself would get reduced. Of course, at the back of it is the United States of America. That's a different argument. And now the Iranians say very cleverly, I don't buy that, but let me not put it that way. They say very clearly, when we say that Israel has no right to exist, we are not saying that Jews have no right to exist. After all, the one country in which the Jews were very strong, very powerful, and totally assimilated was Iran. Now, what they're saying is that when they say Israel has no right to exist, it's the state of Israel as it exists now. But if it is part of a larger Palestinian state, then yes, the Jews are there.
But sir,
I do message like that.
so that's a distinction without a difference. If you say things like that, that is just because you need a country which is in their mind a refuge. But the interesting times, as you said, very interesting times and difficult times for India, because my view, sir, is Hamas is okay. I may not be a great humanitarian and believe all that reasons, but Iran, India has interest. So that is going to be a tightrope for the prime minister and for the Indian government to walk.
I agree with you. It's because until now, Netanyahu was not as unrestrained as he is now. So now he's become totally unrestrained. There was no need for him to trigger this war. He doesn't have the capacity to take up Iran's nuclear facility. He needs United States. He's dragging the United States into the conflict. Once that happens, then if Iran reacts, after all, Qatar is right next door, and Americans got a huge base there, huge base in Iraq. They're all within the reach of Iranian missiles, and they can cause damage. And then Iran is totally destroyed. And what does Iran do? It blocks the Straits of Hormuz. They have to just sink 2 ships, and that's it. And the oil prices go up to God knows what. And look at and then I can share with you something which is real. The Saudis are terrified that if this war expands, then they may just attack the refinery and bring their oil production to a halt. They did that. The Houthis did that, and they have learned that lesson. They don't want it. They don't want the war to expand. They'll be happy if Iran it does not possess nuclear weapons, but not at the cost of a wider region. And if that happens, India will suffer. I mean, we have 9 million people there, $30-40 billion of remittances. Our energy sources come from there. The oil prices shoot up. Look at it, what does to our economy. So is the security of Israel so central for regional security or global security? No. There has to be some limits imposed on Israel's right to do what it wants in terms of its security, because it affects, beyond a certain point, the legitimate security interests even of a country like India.
That is why, sir, I'll just finish by, there is this very recent interview of Ted Cruz, a senator, with Tucker Carlson, in which how US is defending, and he is going to, that Israel is the Israel referred to in biblical terms, and it's the same Israel. So it's very interesting what's in domestic politics of US also happening, because President Trump came as the person who will not engage in any wars. So for him also domestically, very interesting times, sir. Thank you, sir, for your time. And as Israel-Iran develops and what India does, when India makes a move, I would request you, sir, again to give time and discuss when India takes a stand and does some moves.
My pleasure. Okay.
Thank you, sir.